Hello and welcome to Voices of the Dream. Today we're talking to Lord Byrin Blackcross. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brian Thomas, also known as Lord Byron Blackcross. I started in the SCA in 1982, and I have been active in both the SCA and Markland. Markland is an East Coast medieval reenactment organization, and like many of the people that live in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, we participate in both. So my persona that I use in Markland is the same persona I use in the SCA. So my story and I guess evolution of the persona follows my career in both the SCA and Markland with some notable differences. Before I explain the story, I am a knight in Markland. I'm one of the first. I'm the first knight of the merit-based knighthood in Markland, called the Order of the Mark, and I was knighted in 1982 after a 2.5 year squireship. I've had multiple squires. I was until a few years ago the regional. I guess it would have been this equivalent of a baron in Pennsylvania, in Markland. My title is Knez, and I was at one time the king of Markland. And I was the first king in Markland to take the Markland crown by force. The Markland crown is decided by battle of armies, not individuals. So to gain the crown in Markland, you need to raise an army and take it away from who has it, whoever has it. And the crown was brought into play in the mid 90s, and I was the first one to raise an army and take it. So my persona that I carry both in Markland and the SA mirrors some of that.
Very nice. That's interesting. So go ahead and tell us your persona story then.
We were a little people, not Norse, nor Balt, nor Slav, but a mongrel people, thanks to the Northmen sailing our sea and traveling up our rivers. We are an old people, with an old culture, old beliefs, and old gods. But we always tried to get along with our neighbors, and for a time everything was bright. Then the new neighbors came, and they had iron in their hearts and in their hands. They did not appreciate our old ways and old gods, and called us pagan. They demanded we embrace their culture, their ways, their gods, and because we were a little people, we bent the knee. To ensure continued obedience, they took hostages, especially the young. The boys were sent to monasteries to be taught by monks to be good little subjects and followers of their true God. But one little boy was not obedient. His father had quickly handed him over to prove what a good subject the little people would be, but the boy was not a good little subject. He was frequently punished for his truculence, and the monk's favorite punishment was to hang a heavy black iron cross around the boy's neck, hung on a coarse rope that bit into his skin and bowed his head both literally and figuratively. They called the little boy Little Black Cross. Eventually the boy did learn, and he became an avid reader. He could speak Latin and the language of his new masters, but he did not read religious texts, but devoured the histories, especially the histories of Rome. He read of Arminius, who was raised by Roman masters, but then betrayed them, helping to destroy the entire legion in the forests not far from his home. He read of Gaiseric and Boudica, and when he had read enough, he escaped the monastery, along with a few other boys who would not bow their heads or bend the knee. They could not return to their homes, though, even if they were welcome. Their former masters would chase them, and the young men did not wish to implicate their families, even if they had sent them away in the first place. So the young men went into the forests and became raiders, preying on those same monks and priests and any small groups of soldiers they could find. The boys became men, but they could not use their real names without implicating their old tribes. Byrin took a new name, the name the monks had laughingly called him, Blackcross. Byrin Blackcross. He and his followers laid claim to the lands of his old tribe and held them against their bad neighbors. They also looked east and sold their swords as mercenaries, adding to their skills and their purses. When the time was right, Byrin made a bargain with the local bishop. He would cease his raids on the monasteries and churches, and would even protect them against others, if the church would formally recognize him as the sovereign lord of his lands. Accompanied by a healthy bribe of stolen silver and gold, the church agreed, and Byrin was recognized as nobility, and even knighted. Byrin then joined an order. Not an order like the Dominicans or the Franciscans, more like the Teutonics or the Templars. The Order of Saint Emiliani, the patron saint of orphans, also known as the Order of the Lost Boys. They were a military order and sold their swords to the highest bidders, recognizing no lord or king. With his sword brother's support, Lord Byrin, Knez of the Varyazi, carved out a territory peopled by those who would not be forced to bend the knee to others, but who volunteered to bend the knee to him. But like all good things, it came to an end. Like the empire he emulated, he fell to treachery by those he most trusted. His people scattered or turned, Lord Byron retired to his beloved order. He moved his family closer to his sword brothers, and found new neighbors in the hills to the north, the Shire of Owlshurst. Wishing to be a good neighbor, he introduced himself and his sword brothers, and offered to break bread and tilt the jug, and in all things be a good neighbor. So now Lord Byron Blackcross sits on his windy hill, not pondering carving new territories, nor finding those who would swear their swords, or leading his sword brothers on a glorious new crusade. No, Lord Byron, first knight of the Mark, former king of Markland, first to take the crown by force of arms, and former Knez of the Varyazi, sits on his hill and ponders how best to be a good neighbor.
Well, thank you very much for that fascinating story. I love that. Um, just the visuals. I just yeah, that was really good. So thank you very much for gracing us with your story. Very much appreciated. And that is Voices of the Dream.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.